Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nyanza podcast for an analysis on everything politics in Kenya. My name is Josiah Odanga. Owing to his latest actions both online and on the ground, many Kenyans have been asking whether Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga is in the presidential election for 2027. From the very outset, this podcast confirms that it is true David Maraga is in that race. So the main question that this podcast is seeking to respond to is whether David Maraga is genuinely in that race or is being pushed by some quarters, and if that is the case, who are they and to what end? Fellow Kenyans, you all know David Maraga for the principled man that he is. Let us give him his flowers. He is a very principled man. We know him as one of the few individuals who ever lived on earth to not have taken any bribe in their entire professional lives. We also remember him for boldly nullifying the 2017 presidential election over what the Supreme Court that he was leading termed as illegalities and irregularities that could not yield a verifiable presidential election. When he left office a few years later, David Maraga had not shown any signs of engaging himself in the politics of this country, the dirty politics of this country for that matter. But beginning December 31st, 2024, David Kenani Maraga, the 14th CJ, has been giving signals that speaks to a man who is interested in politics. In his press statement that marked the end of 2024 and ushered in the new year 2025, David Maraga condemned the abduction of young Kenyans, the Gen Zs, and the enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. He even opined that 2025 would be the year that those who have been persecuting Kenyans will face justice. And when bodies of young men who had been missing for some time were discovered at the city mortuary, David Maraga issued another statement condemning the state for killing those young people. Later, David Maraga was seen meeting members of the civil society. Notably, there was Nyamesa Chelagat, there was Wanjiru, if I got the name right, there was Odhiambo Jiro, and the civic educator Okoth Opondo. Shortly afterwards, we saw Maraga in an ACK church in Kibra saying that he was there to fellowship with the youth, and later issued a statement saying that he is with the youth, indicating that he's banking his hopes and his attempts at the presidency on the young people. So these actions by David Maraga, if you are a good political student, you will know for a fact that David Maraga is in the presidential race. But away from that, why is David Maraga in this race? Number one, David Maraga is falling in the trap laid by President William Ruto. Here is why. William Ruto currently has mismanaged the affairs of this country, both home and abroad, and is hated by many Kenyans. To be fair, more than half of the population hates him. and would want to deny him a second term in office come 2027. And so, William Ruto is marking his potential challenges. And William Ruto, the shrewd politician that you know for a fact that the number one person who would deny him a chance at a second term is the former powerful cabinet secretary, Fred Matiang'i. Fred Matiang'i's confidence have confirmed that indeed Fred Matiang'i is going to resign from his job at the World Bank and will be in this country sooner than later to campaign to challenge Ruto for the 2027 presidency. Fred Matiang'i has the Abagusi community behind him. Remember, in 2021, he was crowned as an Abagusi elder and their spokesperson. And for that matter, Fred Matiang'i is the top-ranking politician from the Abagusi region. The Abagusi people have close to 2 million votes from that area. The politics that we are seeing currently are happening against the backdrop of the ouster of Ruto's first deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, from government. And Gachagua has taken the mountain with him. Nearly 4 million votes from that region will not be cast in favor of Ruto come 2027. The people of the mountain, Rigathi Gachagua himself, has indicated that they have no beef against Fred Matiang'i and that they are in talks. Uhuru Kenyatta, whom Fred Matiang'i served diligently during his reign, is the leader of the Jubilee Party. The Jubilee Party, through its Secretary General, Jeremiah Kioni, has announced that they have decided that Fred Matiang'i is going to be their presidential candidate in that election. So, in essence, the mountain do not have any beef against Fred Matiang'i, about 4 million votes. And they are so decided that their number one enemy is William Ruto. And the main reason they are only mobilizing to deny William Ruto. That is their number one objective. The other objective of bringing good governance to this country, to them, only comes second. So take the 4 million votes from the mountain and the 2 million votes from Kisii, that makes it 6 million votes. Move to other regions. Remember, Fred Matiang'i has never had any squabbles with Raila Odinga. And so, to that effect, Raila Odinga is still silent, and he may decide to crown Fred Matiang'i. That would mean that Luo Nyanza, the 4 counties of Luo Nyanza that believes in Raila, will cast their lot with Fred Matiang'i. So William Ruto, and of course there are votes from Western Kenya. The Western Kenya people have always followed Raila. So if Raila says this, they will cast their votes to Matiang'i. And of course the Natembea factor in Western Kenya. You can't wish that away. There is a possibility that there are people from Western Kenya who will vote for a president based on what Natembea has told them. Natembea worked as a regional commissioner in the Rift Valley under Fred Matiang'i. So they are best of friends. They can work together. Consider those votes from Natembea, the votes from the Abagusi people, and the votes from Central Kenya. President William Ruto knows for a fact that Fred Matiang'i is number one challenger. So what is he doing? What trap has he laid for Maraga? Remember that Maraga will also want the Abagusi people to back him because Maraga comes from that region as well. Currently, there are people who are already rubbishing Matiang'i in the region. There are pockets of bloggers and politicians who have been pushing for the Maraga card. They are saying that in comparison, if they weigh or if they sift, they realize that Maraga is the cleanest of candidates. Personally, I feel that Maraga is the cleanest aspirant to ever emerge. But then, that doesn't mean that he will win. So, there are people who are playing that card. Actually, there have been flyers online. If I may just read one of them. There have been flyers saying that Maraga is the legit, honest man that Kenya needs. If you look at those who are pushing for that card, it's largely composed of bloggers from the Abagusi community. Interestingly, these are people who campaigned for UDA candidates in Kisii and Nyamira and failed terribly while at it. These are bloggers who are aligned to the first governor of Kisii, James Ongwae. These are bloggers who unsuccessfully campaigned for the gubernatorial election of Ezekiel Machogu in Kisii and the present cabinet secretary for education, Julius Ogamba, as his running mate. They failed. They are saying Mosacha, Komosacha. I'm not a Kisii, I don't know what that means, but that's a slogan that was used then by those people who are supporting Machogu, Ogamba, and Ongwae. So these are people who are out to divide the Abagusi community. Remember, Fred Matiang'i enjoys the fact that he is currently the official spokesperson of the Abagusi community, as was endorsed by the Abagusi Council of Elders in December 2021. The talk about Matiang'i's presidency, haijaanza sahi. It started way back in 2019 when people started to push for Matiang'i to run for the presidency in 2022. At some point during the burial of former MP, the late Daniel Manduku, Raila Odinga was forced to declare his position as regards the talk about Matiang'i presidency then. He said, he heaped praises on Fred Matiang'i, saying that Matiang'i is his son, someone he has worked with, and someone who has a great leadership potential, whose time to lead this country would come, and that he would not have any problem with it. So, by all standards, Fred Matiang'i ranks highly politically in the Abagusi region than David Maraga. And so, whereas David Maraga may not be aware that is being used to split the people of the Abagusi and any other person who may want to remove Ruto from power, David Maraga must be very careful to not to fall into that trap. Another point as to why David Maraga may be in this race. David Maraga is being pushed by the civil society. Initially, I told you, at the beginning, I told you that he has met activists. These are career activists who are known, Kasmuel Makoure referred to them as career journalists, career activists who are out there in the business of grant writing. These are people who, being that they were part of the Gen Z protest, they also want to see and feel as if they have won by replacing Ruto. So they have looked for someone who is not compromisable, someone who has a clean name, and they have only found Maraga. I don't disagree with them. Even if it were me, I would choose Maraga because his name has not featured in any scandal before. But then they could be genuinely pushing for him to run, or remember they are known, these are people, majority of them are known to be tumbocrats. Majority of these career activists are known to be tumbocrats. They may as well be as corrupt as the Ruto in State House that they have been protesting against. So these are people who can, some of them, they are characters we know that can accept pay to jeopardize the 2027 election in favor to their paymasters. So again, Maraga needs to be very careful on these activists who are surging forth to push for him to be on the ballot. Lastly, David Maraga may just be in this race for all the genuine reasons. For all the genuine reasons of wanting to step up and just be that person who is being used by God to liberate Kenya. This is a man of God by all standards. We know him for being a man of God. Somebody who has said that the greatness of a nation depends on the fidelity to the Constitution, the rule of the law, and above all, the fear of God. This is a man of God. And maybe he's just surging forward so that he can liberate Kenya from the mire that Kenya is stuck in. Remember, there is this saying that we've borrowed this country from the future of our grandchildren. So David Maraga may just be that Kenyan that God is using and who is responding to a call by God to solve the mess that Kenya is in. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, David Maraga is in this presidential race, but Kenyans must be extra careful not to be divided and fail to remove Ruto from power. David Maraga needs to think deeply about the liberation struggle ahead of 2027. Whether he's going into the race himself or identifying someone with the potential to remove Ruto from power and supporting him. So the 2027 election, in as much as we want Ruto out, may still slip away if Kenyans are not careful on whom they are going to support. And just to give you a bonus, I don't mean to spoil anything for David Maraga, but remember, there is a possibility that Maraga and Ruto are friends. The fact that in 2022, barely 4 months after William Ruto became president, he appointed David Maraga to a 20-member task force on police reforms, point to people who are friends. I don't know what you think, but a day or a week in politics is a very long time. In politics, there are people who will come as saints, and then you will just realize later that they were not saints. You saw it with Ruto. He duped almost everybody, including the clergy, into believing that he's the man who had been sent by God. May I know whom you are supporting and what you think of this analysis in the comment section. Thank you. My name is Josiah Danga. Bye bye. See you in the next podcast.